Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me properly? Assume yes. So why do we need the Responsible Business Initiative? I'm convinced that the vast majority of businesses already does pay attention to human rights and environmental risks. Nonetheless, there are certainly still companies which make negative headlines with gross human rights violations or environmental degradation, especially multinational companies are often operating in countries where corruption is widespread and where victims of human rights violations or environmental deconstruction do not have access to justice. So it's essentially also about access to justice. Some of these companies are taking advantage of the lax situations to disregard fundamental human rights or environmental standards. And that's where the Responsible Business Initiative kicks in. It wants to close those legal gaps generated through globalization. It's really about taking a close look and no longer closing your eyes to human rights violations and environmental deconstruction in one's business activity. Respecting fundamental human rights and environmental standards, in my opinion, is the basis for more sustainable businesses, and sustainable businesses will in its turn lead to more sustainable development. So maybe we can go on to the next slide. What does this initiative demand for Swiss-based companies? First of all, it needs to be said that the initiative targets large multinational companies. Small and medium-sized companies are to be excluded unless they are operating in high-risk sectors, although it is for the legislator, the implementing legislator, to decide exactly what are small and medium-sized companies. The initiative introduces mainly two instruments. We've heard that already. First and foremost, it introduces human rights due diligence. As you probably all know, the concept of human rights due diligence is derived from the UN guiding principles, which were adopted back in 2010. By the way, also supported by the International Chamber of Commerce. What does this include? First, companies need to assess their risks for human rights and environment. Second, companies need to take measures to prevent or mitigate these risks. And third, companies need to account publicly for both risks and measures taken. Next slide, please. Let me just say this. What maybe bothers me most about the current No campaign is that it suggests that today we industrial companies are more or less blindly and randomly procuring goods on the world market, and that it would be absolutely absurd and extreme to have our supply chains under control. This is really complete nonsense. It is already common practice for every industrial company of at least a minimum standard to have a supplier management system. Otherwise, we could probably hardly guarantee other aspects, crucial aspects such as safety, quality of our products, or even delivery deadlines. Already today, we do this in a very balanced manner with important, crucial suppliers. We look very closely. With less important suppliers, we look rather summarily. With unimportant suppliers, we might even be happy with just a self-assessment. The Responsible Business Initiative would also not introduce something completely new, and that is to say supplier management, but it would just, in my opinion, add new aspects, namely human rights and environmental standards, to supplier management and audit schemes. This, in my opinion, is feasible, justifiable, and above all, also effective. Next slide, please. what does it mean to our company? As I said in my just previously, supplier assessments are already an integral part of quality management systems, such as, for example, ISO 9001. Every company already today reviews its suppliers with regard to quality, deadlines, safety, and other aspects. And now we would have to include new aspects such as human rights and environmental standards, but there won't be a need for a completely new system. Conducting human rights due diligence is a matter of proportionality. So for small, uncritical suppliers, it's just a self-declaration maybe. And for the really critical suppliers, you would have to really go there and conduct an audit. But that's something industry is, I guess, is used to. So I think even as we do it today, we are a company in the metal industry. We have several hundreds of suppliers. We have such a system in place. It's feasible. It's proportionate. I think it's really about identifying material risks in your supply chain, in your company, in your subsidiaries, and have in place processes from which you could reasonably expect that the material risks are being dealt with. So next slide, please. I think the initiative will, because of the reasons I said, improve the notions of Swissness, especially in more exposed sectors. Swiss-made as a label would in the future not only stand for high quality products, but also for a high degree of responsibility. I think also Switzerland needs to keep pace with international developments. Numerous countries have already in place similar regulations. It's about time for Switzerland to catch up with these developments. And last but not least, the initiative would also create a level playing field between responsible and irresponsible companies. Companies who violate human rights or environmental standards should no longer have a comparative advantage in Switzerland over more carefully operating companies. I think in the end, also prevention of reputational and political damages for companies, as well as Switzerland as a business location are points to be considered. We often hear abroad when we talk about Switzerland that we are linked to some types of businesses we maybe don't like so much. Just some last words on the counter proposal. In my opinion, as far as I understand it, introduces mainly new reporting duties, but really lacks an effective enforcement mechanism. There are monetary sanctions for wrong or misleading reports or reporting sanctions, but it is up to the company to report on whatever they want, and there is no sanction for actual human rights violations. So even and that's really the core of the problem. Even if companies controlled companies in countries where there is a total lack of access to justice, even then there is not possible actually to hold the company liable. To me, this counter proposal seems like a lot of bureaucracy without too many effects. And the initiative, on the other hand, relies primarily on civil liability for enforcement, which is, I think, a very liberal instrument. To come to an end, the initiative, as you might know, is supported not only by a big coalition of NGOs, but also by hundreds of entrepreneurs. like myself, and has broad political support from centrist parties such as Green Liberals, BDP, parts of Christian Democratic Party, and obviously also more left parties. But we have even SVP of French-speaking Valais, which is interestingly enough in favor of the initiative, and I think they know a bit what Swissness is about, so that's very interesting. On the European level, to really come to an end now, we have just recently heard that the European Brand Association with its 2,500 members does also support the civil liability for severe human rights harms caused by companies' own activities abroad. So I think it's really also in line with European developments, and therefore I'm confident for a clear yes on November 29th. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very interesting